Moving on, we will start with the first video for the panel Youth and Work.
To not think about not having money to carry on with life, just be happy with your family.
Career success to me would be my proficiency as a radiographer. I think it's very heartwarming when patients thank us when they leave the room. So like some of the patients would be like, "Thank you, Missy," or "Thank you, doctor."
I think success in a job is one where you feel like the skill set that you bring that is unique, the knowledge and experience that you bring to the table is being effectively tapped on, such that you don't feel like it's just a job to put food on the table, but also one where it gives meaning to your life.
When I was younger, I think I wanted to climb up the corporate ladder, but I think now, as a working mom, it's more important that I have a job that I can do on a daily basis that gives me some sort of a work-life balance, something that aligns to my values, and one that allows me to, grow, right?
I think is work-life balance, and I know a lot of people will be like, okay, work-life balance, this girl's probably like a bit like lazy or whatever, but I feel like yes, while I'm working, I'm able to give my 100%, but I think youth these days also want to have that balance in work. We also want to have the after work hours to ourselves to recharge and be ready for the next day.
Career success for me would look like one that aligns passion, purpose with also pay. In Singapore, I think the reality is that we do need a certain amount of salary to survive. To do tours in a neighborhood that I've lived all my life in Geylang, that also enabled me to explore financially how it could be sustainable and also how it could have functions to give back to the place and the community that I live in.
I didn't want a job that was desk-bound. I wanted to move around more, and I wanted a profession where my knowledge could be beneficial for the people around me.
I would say it's not a calculated series of steps that I've taken. It was simply a process of elimination. There were also practical considerations. So truth be told, if a job that I'm applying for meant that I had to climb a flight of stairs every day, there were no lifts, or no wheelchair accessible toilets, then simply those were out of the question.
I honestly didn't really know what to do, and I think, by the way, that's fine. Looking back, I really wanted to do something that plays to my strengths, and one thing that I really enjoyed was interacting with people. So I decided to go into sales when I had my kids. I think it really shaped what I consider to be important. That's why, to me, work-life balance is really key.
I think one important consideration for me was really what can I learn from these new roles and new jobs out there. So that's when I saw an ad for a traineeship role, and I thought, okay, wow, this is a great opportunity for me. It would be such a good stepping stone to understand what the tech industry is like as well.
I'm a multi-offender, so since 20 to my 38, I've been in and out. I don't have a skill, I don't have a certification. I'm actually a very active person, which is why if I'm going to do food delivery and I cycle and get paid, why not? And then at the same time, there's this opportunity on the bicycle shop, which is why when I saved up doing food delivery, then I went into this bicycle business.
I think for me, we are at the crux in society where it is a clear demographic challenge. On one hand, rapidly aging population, on the other hand, the increased dependency on foreign workers. We need more young people joining the sector, not just of elder care, of healthcare, but really the social sector of creating change and making the society what we want it to be.
I think the most prominent one now would be the workload. At the start when I joined, I already expected there would be a bit of like shift work. Yeah, but nothing prepared me for the night shift. You have to work through 12 hours. Then sometimes there are no patients throughout the night. Sometimes it's like an entire wave comes together. It has definitely affected my social life.
There is a high level of demand of your time and your energy, especially so when you are in a high-performance environment. So it's really about a constant juggling act between the time that you spend with family, time that you spend on rest, time you spend at work, and with friends, etc.
I think definitely moving to Singapore was a challenge, not because Singaporeans are not nice or anything, but just because it was a new culture and a new country. So it was a bit scary. I think having a child was, in a way, a bit of a challenge. Like if a child gets sick, can be, I think, difficult for some moms to work from home, for instance.
Because of the job climate right now, it was a bit difficult to secure a bit more full-time roles. That's why coming into this contract role, it gives me a bit of ease of mind because I know, okay, I'll be there for 1 year and then maybe from there I'll see how things go. I feel like maybe every industry could be impacted by some kind of external force as well. So maybe job security isn't as what we thought it was nowadays.
I tried sending in resumes and stuff like that. My mindset is just straightforward. My resume with a cover letter will indicate I'm ex-convict, not a first-timer or second-timer, it's multiple. But if you're interested, then you schedule me down for interview. If not, don't waste both our time. Food delivery-wise, quite straightforward. The weather, the traffic, and nasty customers. The platforms are cutting down incentive. Actually, you really can feel the heat.
I think the pandemic was a challenge for tours. I thought since it was a lull period for the business, it would be the best opportunity to pick up practical skills for caregiving in an institutional setting. That's where I applied for the job in the nursing home as a care staff.
As of now, I like my career because I see a lot of potential for growth and fulfillment because of the different career paths and specializations that are available.
I never mapped out where I'm going to be next year, in the next 5 years or 10 years. I suspect many Singaporeans do. A career is a very long one. I see it more as a marathon.
I really like what I'm doing right now. For now, in my current state, I think I can. But life, there are always changes and challenges, so you never know.
When I first stepped into the agency, right, my whole goal was, okay, I want to stay there for 2 years. But I think when I started to face a bit of difficulties, I was actually having a really tough time of deciding, should I stay or should I go? Because people have that impression that, you do job hop, which I think fair enough, people actually do that. But at the same time, you need to look from an individual perspective. Once I made the jump going into the tech industry, that's when I actually gained a lot of respect for myself because I knew that, okay, this wasn't the job that was fit for me, but now I'm going to move and actually look for something that suits me.
For the business-wise, can't give you a confirm yes because business, you have to see how it goes. But definitely no for food delivery. I'm still physically fit now at this age. As I get older, my body, I don't think I can cope anymore.
I think the only reason why I am able to juggle all these stuff for the past 2 years is I'm still young and I don't think I'll be able to do it for much longer. For me, I also like to consider my life as a social experiment to see how far I can push the boundaries in passion and purpose.
I think implementing work-life balance policies would be beneficial for employees and employers alike. They are beneficial for employees in terms of their overall mental health and their overall well-being. So this would in turn create a more productive and motivated workplace setting. So if we have mental health leaves, then staff would be more motivated because they know I'd be able to take this leave to care for myself on this day, then they don't have to worry as much or be very stressed out throughout the week.
If you can, do look for those employers, for those companies who have the right policies that will allow you to, for instance, work from home, be able to take time off when you need to be with your children. I think that really helps a lot, especially in the early years when your children are so young.
At least for me, my understanding of the government, I think they're doing a pretty good job as well. For example, you have the Skills Future credit. Whether you're a fresh grad, whether you're a mid-career switcher, you're able to learn more while in addition to your job as well. And I think these are such policies that help people to gain new transferable skills that they can bring to the next work.
They need to hear from us on the road, or those really delivery riders itself, and not from office management because they are not on the road. They don't know actually what we are facing out there.
For the business front and for people who are pursuing their passion and purpose, I think the end goal is that it needs to also be something that's financially sustainable. I think we cannot depend on government grants or funds to carry a business and to scale it up. Yeah, so I think it's not so much of legislation but more of the economic support, mentorship from other business leaders and community of like-minded entrepreneurs, for example, to gain ideas and insights from.
Whether you have a disability or not, you want to feel like you have made it at your job because you have something valuable to put on the table. How much policy comes into play to define that is difficult to say. It's also a matter of having the willingness of the employers to see past disability, the willingness of those looking for employment to step up and put themselves in potentially uncomfortable environments to thrive.
This panel will discuss young people's employment aspirations and the new workplace compacts between employers and employees under an evolving labor landscape. The moderator of this panel is Dr. Laurel Teo, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies. She will open the panel discussion and introduce the speakers. May I now invite members of the panel on stage, please?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Laurel, a Senior Research Fellow with IPS, and very happy to be here this morning to moderate this panel, the first panel with different speakers on stage. So our panel is on youth and work, and we saw from our video earlier a very interesting range and mix of speakers from very diverse backgrounds. We had people in different industries and different, I think, education levels, and we had ex-offenders and people who are also very active in the civic society sphere. So likewise, on stage with me today, I have panelists from, we're very lucky to have panelists from a diverse range of jobs and experiences as well. They are arranged in order of which they will speak to you later. So immediately to my right is Ms. Tian Wen-Li. She'll be the first speaker. She's currently a journalist with the Straits Times and covering the social and education beats. But Wen-Li is no stranger to IPS. Up until last year, she was with IPS Social Lab as an ethnographer and researcher. She was a very integral part of a large and impactful study that the Social Lab did on platform food delivery riders, workers. And she also does research on intergenerational poverty, in-work poverty, and she has personally worked as a meat packer in a meat packing factory to better immerse herself in experiences of those who work in blue-collar jobs. So she has lots of experience on what youth and people in the lower lower social class and low-income groups feel, and what are their challenges and their aspirations. And the next speaker we have is Professor Sam Yam. He's currently the Provost Chair, Professor of Management, and Head of Department of Management and Organization Department at NUS Business School. Professor Yam specializes in psychology of technology at work and also leadership and business ethics. And he looks at how future work will affect employees, customers, and organizations. So he will come from the perspective of very rigorous scientific research on the social psychology and behavioral perspective of how people behave at work, future of work. So he will talk about in his presentation, he will talk about generational differences in workers' attitudes and what are some of the, and then draw from his own research projects as what are some of those causes. And then last but not least, we have Ms. Natasha Choi, who is Acting Director of Youth Development at NTUC. So she has more than 10 years of experience in the labor movement, and she now leads efforts to empower and support youth in the work and career aspirations. And recently, just last year in 2023, I believe NTUC Youth Task Force has completed a report on the new generation worker. It's a combination of 1 year's engagement with youth from age 17 to 25 through interviews, dialogues, focus group discussions and surveys. So Natasha will be touching on some of the findings and relate that to what we saw in the video. And I shall say that with the exception of myself, everybody on this panel is age 35 and below. So you'll hear from the real youth. Okay. Okay, so Wenli, if I could invite you to present your,
So I'll be mainly talking about like how do we understand young workers through gig work, like what are the values and priorities. So like previously mentioned, I spent some time in a factory, and factory life is very rigid. It's governed by rules and regulation. You know, you are structured by your time and everything. So I have to like punch a card every time. The break time is very precise, and this is one of my salary slips. So if you actually look at it, I was paid $7 an hour, and then you can see the number of hours that they calculated, 61.52. It's calculated to 2 decimal place, right? So I was like, why don't you just round it up? It's only a few cents. So it's very precise, and it's mostly all older generation workers, the older working class. So I think I entered the factory around like my early 20s, and I was probably the only Singaporean worker that was in my 20s when I entered the factory. So, and I have so much respect for them because they have to come, you know, like 7 a.m. every day all the way until like 6 p.m. every single day. But then the question is, where are the young workers, right? So after, you know, maybe it's good that the younger workers, they have more opportunities, can explore, they have more education, they explore different career pathways, but there's still blue-collar jobs in Singapore. So, and one of the prominent ones is obviously the gig worker, the gig work economy. So after I was hired by IPS, I was part of the team in work poverty in NUS and IPS, led by Professor Irene Ng and Dr. Matthew Matthews. So we did an ethnography on platform gig workers. So we interviewed and followed about 83 Singaporeans aged 21 to 40 years old. And we did 2 major surveys of about 1,000 private hires and 1,000 food delivery workers. And it was from 2020 to 2023 during the pandemic years and the rise and fall of the income and incentives of gig work. So, and there are a lot of appeal to gig work, right? And there's this whole idea of the entrepreneurial spirit attached to the youth. People want to make a lot of money. People want to be their own boss. There's a lot of flexibility involved. And you know, they can cater to their caregiving needs. They can cater to a lot of their own passion, their own hobbies while doing this kind of job. And there's also this idea of like this perceived fairness and equality that appeals to a lot of gig workers. For example, there's this opportunity to earn more than what they would normally have in other jobs that might be available to them. As you know, factory work, maybe you work so long, but you only have $2,000, $3,000 at most. So there's this idea that, okay, like Andy, for example, all these are fake names, by the way. Andy, he's an ex-factory worker. He didn't really like the structured life, so he wanted flexibility. So he began to do gig work, and even though the incentives have dropped, everything has fallen, demand has fallen, he still found it better than the other available jobs to him because of his low education. And there's also this sense of there's an equal playing field, like an ex-convict can just become a gig worker. There's no human manager, imposing stereotypes on him and stuff like that. And also Marcus, he was previously in hospitality for 10 years. He worked in the hotel for 10 years before reaching the manager status. And he earned about 3,000 plus when he left because he was looking at, okay, my pay increment is only like $100, and the people below me, the pay increment is only like $10, $20. But with gig work, if I work hard enough, I can earn $5,000, $6,000. So there's this idea of meritocracy for some of the riders. But what does it really mean, right? So it takes a lot to succeed in gig work. So the reality is many people don't. Most people earn, the medium salary we found in our survey was 1.9 from food delivery work, 1.9K. So I followed Marcus around. So he was one of the top people in Yishun. So he was, because my stamina is not very good, so he was like, okay, you can just come on a chill day, on a Sunday, my half day. And then his half day turned out to be 9 hours long. And so I cycled with him for 9 hours, no break. And the algorithm recognized that he's so good that the algorithm sends him to very far places. So if you look at this photo, his bicycle is the only bicycle in a sea of like e-bikes and motorbikes. Because how good he was. And there's also another rider here. I followed him cycling through the thunderstorm, and he really prefers thunderstorm because there's more incentives involved, and there's a lot lot less competition. And these people work insane amount of hours, physically cycling and on a motorbike, and they earned but there's a lot of variation. Like for example, Marcus, Yishun was very competitive. So even though he worked like crazy, he only earned like at most like 6,000 a month. But compared to someone else who worked in a different place, maybe they could earn more money. So and the reality is you need a lot of discipline, and you will forgo a lot of flexibility. And there are many, many precarious workers. The huge majority of them don't earn $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. If you walk around the rental housing neighborhoods, you'll see a lot of like delivery bags around in the corridors because a lot of them prefer this kind of flexible work. And it's very dangerous in the sense that you might get very dependent. And it's very dependent on the market forces. Like for example, one rider sent me a photo of this suspended account, and her and her husband were both suspended overnight, and then they lost their livelihood overnight. And there's another rider, he was on a motorbike, so I followed him for 2 hours in CBD area, and he earned less than $20 in 2 hours on a motorbike. So then you have to calculate your fuel and all of those kind of things. So it's really like, they do want to transition out. A lot of the riders responded in our survey that they do hope to transition out, but where do they go, right? There is also an issue of a horizontal mobility, meaning that they do move around a lot, but they don't really move up, right? Their friends and family may introduce them to different jobs, different opportunities, or they might follow trends. For example, healthcare was very big, IT was very big, but it might not be very focused in a way, so it might be good because they're young, so they can try out different opportunities. But at the same time, they are kind of just jumping in many, many things. And some might be successful. They might take courses that specialize to their advantage, to what they are really good at. I know some riders who managed to successfully transition out to become ambulance drivers or like executives and all that. But and they might hustle, and they might do a lot of like side jobs. And like one participant in the video, he mentioned that he's still young, he can juggle a lot of things. But at what point would you want to stop the hustling, right? And many riders may keep going back to gig work because it fulfills a lot of the needs that they need. Like they need flexibility, caregiving needs and all that. They might transition out, but there's a lot of, it's kind of like a safety net. The gig work economy is always there. Even though it's falling, the rates are falling, the fares are falling, it's become more and more hard to sustain a livelihood on it. And also, there's also the issue of like passion. So how much value do the labor market place on passion? So there are a lot of passionate people. So I remember talking to this person, so I also follow him around, and he told me that he broke his foot, so he couldn't do food delivery work, so he decided to pursue his passion. So he really, really loves bicycles, so he worked in a bike shop full-time. But then he realized that he cannot survive on the paycheck alone, and then immediately after he recovered, he went back to food delivery full-time so that he could do part-time bike work, because that's where he really loves, that's where his passion lies. So it's kind of like he's using another thing to fund his passion, So it's, perhaps there is like a lot of gaps in the labor market for young people, right? Because research have shown that graduates earn much more than non-graduates. The gap is very big when it comes to salary. And even though gig work has many, many, many issues, it's not sustainable, it's not really a long career path for them, but there are still some appeal to gig work work to some people is dangerous. You have to put in so long hours. I remember a guy, he wanted to make a lot of money, so he did very extreme things like work 16 hours every day for like 21 days straight, and then he ended up in an accident, got into a coma. But he was like, okay, the money I earn from them, I can set up a food business. So they saw the appeal of it, and they saw like the appeal of flexibility and all of those kind of things, right? So young people don't want to work in a factory forever, their whole lives. I know that because I work in a factory, and I don't really want to work there my whole life. The labor landscape might not be very favorable to some people in a way. So they want to find a path that fulfills them, to fulfill their livelihood. So maybe we can understand their experiences and their struggles from gig work to really try to better design jobs for the youth, especially those from low-wage work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for those fascinating insights. Now we move to Professor Sam Yam. If you could share a little bit of your thoughts about the video, and then also segue into your own presentation.
Good morning, everyone. So 2 disclaimers. Before I arrive at this room at 9 o'clock, I thought I'd be speaking to 50 academics. So presence applies to me as students, as a corporate partners, as other folks here. So excuse my jargon in my presentation in terms of research on differences in attitudes and work values among different generations. Second disclaimer, I'm actually not a Singaporean. I'm from Hong Kong. I've been here for about 9 years, educating at the NUS Business School. Educated hundreds and hundreds of students, so I've seen some differences across the years in the past approximate decade when I have been an educator at NUS. Now, today I want to talk a little bit about my research, as well as my colleagues' research about are there any differences in generations in terms of work values, attitudes, and behaviors. Before I address my presentation, I want to first talk a little bit about the survey that was presented just now, the polling survey from the Institute, as well as the video. So marriage is a big topic in terms of people not wanting to get married. Retirement is a big topic. Healthcare is a big topic. Climate change is a big topic. Now, in psychology, we have this concept that was developed about 25 years ago called affective forecasting. Effectively means that when you want to engage in a behavior, you first estimate, you first forecast how happy or how unhappy you will be if you do engage in that behavior. So getting married is a great example. Finding a new job, great examples. Now, research also shows that we are extremely, extremely bad at forecasting how we will feel following an event that would happen in the future. I'll give you one example. Now, many years ago, in 1998, the guy named Dan Gilbert, a very famous psychologist at Harvard Business School, in which he asked his undergraduate students in Psych 101, hundreds of them, 2 simple questions. First, he asked them, first he asked them this question: are you currently dating or are you currently single? Now, half the students said they were dating someone, they have a boyfriend, they have a girlfriend. The other half said they were single. Now, they follow up, I think, the second question, saying that, are you really happy right now? All right? And then following that up, he also asked them, in 6 months, let's assume that for the person who are currently attached, assuming that your girlfriend and boyfriend just dumped you. You break up with your boyfriend and girlfriend. The other half, those who are currently single, forecast how you feel in 6 months that you are actually having a boyfriend or girlfriend. Now, those individuals who were asked to forecast how they will feel after they experience a breakup, the fact they will feel devastated. They will feel a lot of negative affect, a lot of negative emotions 6 months after. Those who said, I'm currently single, if 6 months later I have a boyfriend or girlfriend, they will feel very, very elated and happy. Now, 6 months after our students back to the class, ask them this question: are you currently single? Are you currently still attached to your former boyfriend or girlfriend? And ask them the happiness level. Now, what's really interesting is that those who said that they would be really upset if their boyfriend and girlfriend break up with them actually did not experience those unhappiness that they forecast they would experience 6 months before. Now, but if you think very carefully about how we behave and how we enact behaviors in the future, we use our current estimate of how we will feel to determine if we should date certain people, should find a new job, or should become an entrepreneur. When in fact, in reality, after those events occur and happen, we simply don't feel such negative emotions. Now, for those who have dated, for those who have been dumb, excuse my language, whenever that happens, typically you don't say, I'm very upset, I'm very happy. Of course, you say something like that, but you follow up by saying, you know what, that person is not that good. I deserve someone way better. This defense mechanism to kick in that will defend you from those negative effects. And for now, the first thing I want to encourage youth in this room, as well as in those videos, is that if you want to pursue a career, being an entrepreneur, for example, that you think will be risky, will be potentially leading you to a financial dismay, please just do it. Because in reality, once it happens, even though if you fail, you won't feel upset about this. All right? So that's one thing I want to respond to the video. Now, second of all, I just want to talk a little bit about differences in attitudes and values across different generations. First, I want to say it's incredibly difficult to tease out between age differences and generation differences. The idea is that if you survey youth today, the polling earlier this morning, it's really hard to say if it's based on age or based on generation. Now, in research published approximately a decade ago, a psychologist at Florida State University actually looked at these differences in a more holistic manner, in a more rigorous way, as I would say. Now, the biggest difference in terms of our father or grandfather generation and our current generation has typically been how much people valued pleasure. Like things outside of work, do they actually enjoy, do they actually have hobbies, do they actually want to hang out with their friends, and so on and so forth. The other things, typically, the differences are quite minimal. Now, the other thing that people typically address is that, so we know that differences in terms of how people think, how people act in the workplace, what causes these differences? Now, in our human history of technology, as a psychologist, I like to think about this from a technology angle. I like to claim that all these things happen because we interact with technology in very, very different manners. So think about the 90s, all right? When I was a very young child, in the 90s, what happened is that cell phones become quite popular. You have large cell phones, you have the Nokia, now you have the iPhone. Now in the 90s, if you want to talk to people, you simply pick up the cell phone and you call someone. In the 2000s, when I was a teenager, we have ICQs, we have MSN messengers that we use to contact with our friends. Now what's interesting is that those two means, those two technological means, these are unmediated. We can still decide who we want to call. We can pick up the phone from our friends and so on and so forth. Now, teens today, youth today, don't grow up with just cell phones. They don't grow up with just ICQ. In fact, from my best knowledge, it's actually gone. In fact, they grow up with little social media that are called mediated interaction. Right? What does it mean by that? In the past, everything is unmediated. We choose what to see, who to talk to, how to interact. Today, the reality is slightly different in that every single individual have their own little bubble of their own mediated reality. So take recent examples like the conflict in the Middle East, the conflicts in Ukraine, for example. Now, the reality is out there that two sides are having a military conflict. Now, unfortunately, every single one of them perceive those conflicts very, very differently, despite the fact that reality is exactly the same. It's the reason because we have YouTube, we have different channels, we have Instagram, we have X, and so on and so forth, that actually affect how we see things. We no longer choose what we see. In contrast, technology companies, tech companies, simply mediate what we see. And of course, with an agenda in mind, that is to maximize their profit, at the same time, keeping us hooked on those devices. Now, at the very end, I want to talk a little bit about my research that was done in Singapore. Now, in this project, we look at, does using AI actually reduce people's value of hard work? In our parents' generation, we typically think of this something like Protestant work ethic, that working hard is a moral virtue. If you work really hard, you should be rewarded. As a result, working hard is a virtue that we all should embrace. Now, youth today, there's a lot of lay belief that they don't believe the same thing as being true. Now, that being said, I want to find out the reason, what are the causes of this decline in the perceived value of hard work. Now, in this project, we make the argument, that using AI actually reduce how unique the work is to you as a person. That if you use AI to do your work, for example, you simply devalue how you yourself feel in terms of uniqueness of the work that you produce. Now, in this project that was done in Singapore, we surveyed a lot of undergraduate students aged about 20 to 24. These are NUS Business School undergraduate students. We've done this in high school in Singapore as well, and so far the findings have been replicated across different contexts. In the interest of time, I'll just present one study using undergraduate in Singapore for you. So in this case, we have approximately 200 participants. We assign them randomly to two conditions. In one group, they were asked to use ChatGPT to write a simple essay. The that we say, you know what, we're going to write an essay, and we want you to write it with the assistant ChatGPT. The other group, they will ask you to write the same essay without any assistance from outside sources. Now, they respond to some survey variable, and then they also rate how good the essay actually they wrote were. In addition to that, we actually have external raters, people who have not known this participant, they have not known about the studies. They actually rate the essay quality to provide objective measure of the essay. Now, what's interesting is that we find that those in the AI condition, those who use AI to assist with their work, actually find hard work to be less relevant and less useful for them in their lives. All right? And it's driven by a sense of reduced perceived uniqueness of the work that they produce, suggesting that use of AI actually can undermine the value of hard work among youth. Now, on the more interesting side, we also look at the essay quality, that if you use AI to write your essay, how would that affect the essay quality? On the panel on the left, looking at the self-rating, you can see that those individuals who self-rate themselves do not perceive any differences in essay quality written by just themselves or with themselves plus AI assistance. Those on the right is for the external raters, suggesting that those who are actually blind to the condition actually find essays written by both the humans and the ChatGPT to be way higher quality compared to those just written by the subjects themselves. Now, all of this is showing that we know for a fact that there's generation differences in terms of the youth and in terms of their parents and their grandparents. We don't know very well about the causes of these differences. And there's a lot of research showing that perhaps technology and how interactive technology actually affect how you think about work and value and work behavior themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Sam Yam. You actually addressed the question that I meant to ask was, how much of the issues that we see earlier was due to the fact of age, just being young. Whether you're young now or young in the 90s or young in the 80s, young people just tend to feel that way versus a generational thing. What you're seeing now is actually unique because of the time that we're in now, because of technology we're facing. So that was very fascinating. Also, a comparison, maybe a thought worth thinking about later on is in the past, the mediated reality that our parents and grandparents had was mediated through traditional media like newspapers, TV, and radio. So not customized mass media, but these days realities are still mediated, but through more customized like social media accounts. Who do you follow? So what are the differences that are then engendered because of these differences? That's quite interesting. We can talk about that later. Finally, we have Natasha. If you could share with us your views of what you saw earlier, and then a little bit about your own presentation.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you also to IPS for inviting me to be on this panel. So the sentiments shared by youth in the video on the various topics were largely similar to what NTUC discovered during our Youth Task Force engagement in the past year. So the Youth Task Force engagement was a campaign we embarked on to engage youths in the IHLs to better understand their work-life aspirations. So we also understood that COVID-19 disrupted many of their educational as well as career aspirations, leaving many of them to feel ill-prepared in terms of entering the workforce. So it's no surprise that many youths also started, to express some of their anxieties on social media. So on NTUC's part, we wanted to understand how we could better support as well as enable the youths. So on stepping into the workforce, the top 3 areas that youths worry about are whether they will be able to achieve work-life balance, their ability to adapt to work, and whether they can decide on a career path without being limited by the expectations of others. So beyond numbers, I thought today I also wanted to share the realities and thoughts of some of the youths we've spoken to during these engagements. So over here we have Angel. Right, so when asked about his thoughts on stepping into the workforce, this was what went through his mind. Right? Diagnosed with ADHD at a young age, he shared that he was judged and misunderstood because of his uncontrolled behavior at times. So he wondered if the future workplace would be one that was inclusive enough to accept him and to give him an opportunity to shine. Next, we have Wen-Qi. So Wen-Qi is also here today at the conference. So Wen-Qi aspires to be a business consultant by day and a matchmaker by night. So I'm sure you can also feel her energy and cheerfulness from this quote alone. However, In our chat with her, we also sense a tinge of fear, especially in terms of securing a job once she graduated. So she had seen peers who had found it difficult to do so, settling for anything that came by. So she was afraid that, whether there would be a mismatch of skills, whether she would be able to possess, skills to basically go through the many stringent interview processes, etc. So we've definitely heard, the same feedback from many of the youths we've interacted. And then we have Zaki, whom we learned was a curious adventurer who loves night walks and martial arts. He defines personal success as being able to provide for his family and future children, and work-life balance matters a lot to him. So he believes time should be allocated for work and family, and he hopes to be someone who is valued for his experiences as well as his skills. So Angel, Wensi, and Zaki are just some of the youths we've had the privilege of meeting, and at these engagements, it was hard not to feel youthful again because of their energy and vibrance. However, in interacting with these youths, hearing their perspectives, anxieties, even the lingo that they were using, some of us couldn't help but feel a certain generation gap, and I think this would be a prevailing challenge for a multi-generational workforce. So I'm glad that besides the NTUC Youth Task Force, the theme of SP 2024 is on youth. Right? I do think that as a society, we do need to give different stakeholders a better understanding of the work-life aspirations of the younger generation. So how then do youths envision their ideal workplace? So from our findings, they have expressed a strong desire to connect as well as to collaborate with others. Mentorship was a key aspect they've brought up as it allows them to gain real-world insights as well as have a better understanding of work expectations. Their ideal future workplace is also one where they can build their professional portfolios, explore career progression opportunities. It is also flexible. It involves them in decision-making. It emphasizes the importance of purpose-driven practices. So in that regard, I do think that different stakeholders, NTUC included, we must adapt ourselves to meet the evolving needs and aspirations of our youth, work alongside them in shaping a future where their contributions are valued, their potential is nurtured, and their voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Okay. Thanks so much. So that rounds out our speaker's presentation. We will next go into question and answer session. So we have about 45 minutes for audience from the floor. You can either go up to the mics that we have lined up on either side of the room and then ask your questions, or you can also send them through a pigeonhole. So may I request that for those who go up to the mic, please state your name, the organization that you represent, and then ask, please restrict yourself to one question so that we have time for more people to ask questions. Anybody first? Any takers of first question? Oh, there? Okay, yep.
Hello, panelists. I'm Charlotte Cowell from CHIJ St. Teresa's Convent. And this question is for all three. So, could the increase in gig jobs possibly be because youths do not want to have a normal sit-down job, but something more interesting, like where you can go around and explore around?
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Maybe we can start with Wenli, since this is what you've been researching.
So I guess that there is like this idea that youths don't really want, because it's a time of exploration, it's a time of finding out what you want to do. So, and they want to break the cycle of like, 9 to 5 in an office job. So maybe gig work do appeal to that, but at the same time, there's also this idea of like entrepreneurial. So this is not new. Every young generation wants to take risks. They want to make it big. They want to, be an entrepreneur. So, and then after that, they get married and have children, and a different story will come. So it is this idea that, when you're young, it's okay to take risks. It's okay to try out different things. And it's not necessarily, gig work. Gig work is, you don't really, unless you really try and you really forgo your flexibility, you work long hours, then you can earn a lot of money. But it also comes with like freelancing, like in the creative industry, in the film industry, different types of jobs that might appeal to youth. But that also you have to think about your sustainability, like when you're in your 30s and your 40s, can you still do such jobs unless you become a business owner, in the industry itself? I'm not sure, and I can't really answer that. So, but I do think that there's a certain appeal for youths. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Professor?
So interact with different population, clearly at NUS Business School, the students are very smart, intelligent, and talented. And very few of them actually indicate they want to ever engage in what we call gig work. So I feel like this is also a kind of like a selection problem, that it seems like some youth have sort of lost the direction, or they have never really seek or find out what their passions are. Whereas college students who have graduates, who have better socio-economic status, typically have better mentoring. We mentioned mentoring a little bit, better guidance from their parents, from their peers, from their siblings even. And I think as a result, those individuals are more inclined to not take gig work. And I really wish to encourage the gig workers to think beyond the flexibility. Like what the other speaker mentioned earlier, is that when you're age 25, 35, you can ride a bike, no problem. But eventually, it's not just a physical demand, it's also like your mental demands. Do you find that to be intrinsically rewarding to be a gig worker, or are you just finding that flexibility to be enjoyable? Because you work 8 hours a day, times 365 days from 35 years, you got to find your passion, what you're interested in. And gig work simply, I'm not ruling this out, but gig work simply is more unlikely to provide that sense of enjoyment, the sense of satisfaction from a successful career.
Natasha?
So in the NTUC Youth Task Force engagements, when we got down to the ground to engage students in the different IHLs, I think one of the things that they've shared with us was the flexibility of that gig job provides. And the other thing we discovered was that in doing so, they were able to pursue their passions on the side, right? Any hobbies that they had, whether it could get them any money, or it could also be in the form of, for example, skills-based volunteering. I think at the end of the day, the appeal of the gig job is really in helping them build up their professional portfolio, as we discussed earlier. And I don't necessarily think that gig job means that you have to go out to do it. I think some of it can also be performed at home, for example. So I think it boils down to this flexibility and ability to let them pursue their passions.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We heard about flexibility and being one of the attractions, and we also heard from Sam about how think beyond just the here and now and see how much longer can you hold on to this job for. And what about other things like personal fulfillment, right? Which is kind of related to this next question. I'm going to bring up a question from online that has got 22 upvotes, so it's one of the most popular questions. It's kind of related. So this question asks, do the panelists think it's important to attract younger Singaporeans to blue-collar jobs? Will raising salaries help? If not, what would it take? So we talked earlier about how a blue-collar job like delivery riding may not be very fulfilling personally in a career way to young people. But how then, but there are going to continue to be blue-collar jobs existing. So how then can we make it more attractive? Or should we try so hard to attract younger workers into these blue-collar jobs? Maybe we can ask Professor Sanyam to take it up.
I just simply think that from an economic perspective, the second part of the question salary, of course, that would help, but simply that is unlikely to happen based on the labor market structure in Singapore. So salary would likely stay stagnant among blue-collar occupation, just like other countries of the developed economy. So this simply is a possibility that's highly unlikely to happen. Now, do I think it's important to attract young Singaporeans to blue-collar jobs? I'm somewhat indifferent to this question. I feel like all kinds of jobs have different values and different promises. So I don't see any issue with a young Singaporean wanting to pursue a blue-collar occupation. I don't think that real salary would rise dramatically based on the labor market structure in Singapore.
Okay. Any other thoughts from other panelists, Wendy?
So I don't think salary will rise a lot, same thinking, but I do think that there's this stigma against blue-collar work, but there's a lot of very highly skilled blue-collar workers out there, and young people, they might take years, if not decades, to really honor their skills. And there's a lot of vocational jobs, and we do need blue-collar workers in every single society, right? We need a plumber, we need people who fix our things, and those are very valuable skills. And we are slowly starting to kind of lose those skills as we develop as a society. Like I can't fix my TV. I don't know what. I really don't know how to fix my toilet. And also, I do need like, and every society we need these people, and we need just like people who can code, people who can teach, people who can do all of those things. So I do think it's very important that we should stop stigmatizing blue collar jobs, even factory work. It's very decent. It's a very honest work. Right? Yeah. So I think it's not just attracting, but it's to kind of just give remove the negative image around blue collar work. Yeah.
Okay, so basically give more dignity to it.
Yes. Yeah.
So, Natasha, any?
Yeah. So I don't think that one of the defining qualities of the younger generation is in terms of their diversity in career aspirations, right? So I do think that we need to recognize that basically for the youths out there, there are different career paths that they want to pursue, and this could, for example, be a career, in a blue-collar job, right? A skilled trade, for example. Right. And I think there certainly is more room to make blue-collar jobs more attractive, and I think with the employers we could work with them on skills progression, the compensation package and whatnot. From Young NTUC's perspective, what we have tried to do was to basically allow youth who are graduating from IHLs to explore different career pathways, and we did so by launching the Career Starter Lab. So essentially what it is a career trial of up to 3 months, and it allows youth to basically work in different jobs. So we have technicians and whatnot. And in this career trial, there's actually there's a structured training as well as mentorship. So they are able to learn more deeply, what kind of prospects they can anticipate if they do join this industry, this job, for example. And I think that is a much better way in helping the youth understand what are some possibilities for the job, and hopefully that can help to attract them into the sector.
So to have sort of more pre-tasting sessions of each jobs. Okay. Right. Thank you, Natasha. We have a question from the floor.
Thank you for the fascinating conversation so far. My name is Satya. I work for a bank called SMBC. I've had a career in professional services for a very long time, and I was fascinated by the conversation specifically on the topic of social status. Peter Drucker, the father of modern management, said knowledge workers can only be rewarded ultimately with social status. And you can bribe them with things like stock options. And I'm trying to change tack here from the gig working point, and I'll come to my question shortly. My question is, in your research, where are you seeing the role of social status featuring in moving people more towards jobs which will give them ultimate fulfillment? And I'm asking that because at some point Singapore will have autonomous vehicles, and I'm assuming that many of these jobs will potentially go away. But also in more broader jobs, we're all moving towards services economy. AI is coming in and disrupting a lot of the traditional, white-collar work. So where do you see social status featuring in this? And, it'll be interesting to understand your research. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So your question is, how much does social status factor in people's considerations when they take up jobs?
Yeah, and how do you drive jobs towards securing better social status, the important jobs? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So
I think I can answer this first question. Lots of economists have done a lot of research about pay, social status, and life satisfaction, for example. And the gentleman is obviously very correct in that a lot of jobs, especially in the white-collar industry, high-paying jobs, the marginal value of making an extra 10, 15K a year is actually none in terms of satisfaction of life and happiness. And the famous Nobel laureate Dan Kahneman did a paper in 2018, I believe, that suggests that you only need $100K US dollar to be satisfied. That figure is updated about $140,000 by a recent paper in Nature Human Behavior. Now, most people, when you ask them, if you make more than, let's say, 200K Singaporean dollar, how would you feel? they always forecast to be very, very happy. They'll be elated when research shows the otherwise. Like the gentleman was saying, is that the marginal value of an extra 10K on that income is, excuse me, is simply none in terms of happiness. So that becomes a different question than what is driving individuals to high-achieving individuals to achieve even more in their life, in their career. And status is obviously one of the many things that people strive for. In my workplace, for example, we have a lot of colleagues who are having a very good paycheck and still work very, very hard because they're interested in that work, they're passionate about that work, and doing good work leads to more status for them as well. So absolutely correct that status is one of the most important predictor, especially among those who are in high-paying jobs in Singapore.
Okay, thank you. Any other perspectives from other speakers? No? Okay. Okay, we have one more question from the floor over there.
Yeah, Matthew Ting from the Silent Foundation. What do you think about expectations of the youth or new workers, especially in relation, not just in terms of white collar, blue collar, but also in terms of even within the white collar and SME versus MNC, right? So a lot of us think, I want high pay, flexibility, and whatever, and a lot of this you can only get in an MNC, right? You hear about Google can let their staff do this, but Google is a huge MNC. They have thousands of staff, so they have the ability to shift work among so many people. But in reality, the majority of firms in Singapore and in many other countries would be SMEs, right? So how do you get workers, to mentally prepare that you probably be working in an SME rather than MNC, and not to expect, that everybody is going to get into an MNC.
Okay, thank you so much. And actually, I want to bring up this is in relation to another question we had online was how can we get people to be more interested in jobs that are less glamorous? So there was a question online on that. So it's in relation to that. So everyone wants to work for something like Google, where you have, or Bloomberg or something, where you have big MNC, fantastic office, free flow of drinks and snacks in the office. But in reality, most of us, 99%, have to work for an SME. So then how do you get people to adjust their expectations? And then how do you get people to accept that most of you may not work in a job as glamorous as you see on your, or what you see depicted in influencers and social media accounts? Maybe Natasha, you can talk about that. Yeah, pick that up.
Also from my interactions with the youth at least, I think when they look for their first job or when they look for internships, for example, I think they're very clear-minded about the kind of skills that they're hoping to build during that stint, right? So I do think that for SMEs, for example, one of the things that such employers can consider is to be clearer, in terms of what exactly the youth might be working on if he or she were to accept a role in the company. And I think this could really help to attract the right candidates even into the job. And I think it really boils down to that, because youth today are quite clear-minded about what they want to do to build up their professional portfolios. And they see it as multiple stepping stones, right? They don't only view their career pathway being in one company, for example. Yeah, so they will be looking for different options, and it will be based on how they can build up their professional portfolios. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other views from panelists? Wendy?
I think a career pathway, the life of a career is very long, so youth will have to prepare that, okay, maybe this is, to reframe it like this is an experience building thing. So I'm going to try out different industries, different things. It might not be glamorous, but that's okay because you can still gain skills and experience and find out what you want and what you don't like. Right? So I still think there's value in even though you want glamorous things, but you can also learn a lot from other kind of work also, yeah.
Right. No, thank you. Actually, I think it gels with the survey that we did last year, the Future of Work survey, in that we asked people to rank, I think, 14 different job characteristics. What is it that you value most? And among young people, it is about building a portfolio skills and career advancement rather than compared to older age groups. So your advice to SMEs out there to attract younger workers to package your job description better about what you can offer in terms of hard skills and what kind of experience they can expect when they join your firm is very, very handy. And we have another question from the floor there, this lady there. Yep.
Thank you for that. Just from the Queensland University of Technology, I was just wanting to ask, what do you think schools and universities should be teaching to help people better be prepared to graduate into the workforce post-COVID?
So what schools and universities should be teaching to help prepare people better for the workforce, and especially the workforce that we're currently looking at? Okay, any first takers for this question?
So I actually just got back from Indonesia yesterday. I was teaching a class in negotiation in Jakarta for NUS. So I feel like many degree programs, not just in Singapore but globally, seems to jump on the bandwagon of AI and technology. And those are really important skill sets. And our undergraduate students typically enjoy those very, very much. Now, at NUS, for example, if you move along the degree ladder, so to speak, from the bachelor degree to master's to executive EMBAs and to other things, at the end of the day, typically when a manager turns about age 40, 45, those skill sets, those what I like to call quantifiable skill sets, like AI, technology, how to use Excel, for example, those become way less relevant because you can always outsource people to do that on behalf of you. Now, I teach negotiation, I teach leadership at NUS, and I got the sense that in the past 10 years, nothing has changed, is that the people skill, the management skill, and the leadership capabilities are just important no matter what age that we live in. Technology cannot really ever outsource. We can never outsource leading people to AI and technology. So I feel like our institution today can prepare youth by better managing them on the people side of things, as opposed to just the quantitative side of things.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Any views from other speakers?
Yeah, so I mean, in response to the question, I was thinking about, what kind of skills would be important to teach. And I think in this aspect, I thought it is important to help the students build up their resilience, adaptability, as well as understanding that, whatever skills that you learn in school today is not going to help you through your life, and you need to be able to build this ability to learn on a lifelong basis, right? So I think that really stems from a mindset perspective, right? So being ready to take on training courses and whatnot, perhaps a year after graduation, right? And not to think that with a degree, you can continue on for maybe the next 3 to 5 years. So I think a lot of it is in terms of the mindset. Yeah, and I do think that as what Prof mentioned, besides the hard skills, I think it would be good if schools can focus on some of these other areas.
Okay, great. Yeah, Wenli?
Yeah, so I do agree on soft skills. It's very important because you can never predict what's the next new industry that's rising, right? So, but soft skills, people skills, and knowing how to network and knowing how to, have a very focused understanding of what you want to do, build the experience from that. I think that's very important. And not just taking tests and exams. I think being open to new experience and being open to learn is very important, especially when you're in your 20s and you want to explore a career pathway that is the most suitable for you. Yeah.
Okay, great. So being agile, basically, in your career path, very important. One question from the floor over there.
I'm from LaSalle College of the Arts. LaSalle College of the Arts being an arts college, many of my peers are graduating into and transitioning into creative industries, which are volatile and subject to change, as we saw during COVID. And further bit of context was last year we saw the writer's strike in the USA, where writers and actors made use of collective bargaining to seek protections from AI and also further advance their image rights and improve pay structures. So my question is an expanded role of the NTUC feasible or even possible to protect gig workers, especially in the creative industries, where freelance and gig work makes the bulk of the labor force?
Okay, thank you. So clearly this question is directed at you, Natasha.
Yeah. Hi there. Yes, I do think that there is definitely a bigger role that NTUC can play. And in fact, we do have a unit called the Freelancers Department. So they have been helmed by my colleague Jean. So we have been doing quite a fair bit in the freelancing space. And one of the things that they are exploring is also in terms of better representation for gig workers. But since we're on the topic of youth, I think one of the things that NTUC could perhaps do together with some of the IHLs to better prepare some of our future freelancers, for example, is to really look at career guidance, right? So perhaps today the career guidance that is offered to youth is very focused on your 9-to-5 roles and whatnot. But then if a youth does decide to, for example, pursue freelancing in the creative media space, he or she has to better understand perhaps about how the contracts are structured, right? And in the event that they face employment disputes, where is it that they can actually go to for help? I think these are all things that NTUC can do more in terms of equipping future freelancers, right, in terms of protecting them, helping them understand where they can go to for help if they need to. And I think in terms of the creative media space, when we talk about preventing disputes and whatnot, fundamentally, we do have a creative media and publishing union, right? So if you are a creative worker and you are employed in a company and you face any issues, do approach the union. Right, there's a lot more that the union can do if the company is unionized under the current Trade Unions Act and Industrial Relations Act, for example. In terms of the recourse that's available, it's definitely much more. Right, so do approach the union if you need any help. Yeah.
Right. Actually, in relation to that, there's a question online that asks, given the recent incident which a company ignored the unions in retrenching staff, how can NTUC engage better with youths to understand their workplace rights and responsibilities? So it's kind of related to what you said.
Yeah, I think it will be similar to what I shared earlier. First, I want to acknowledge that I think there's a lot more that NTUC can do to help youths understand about their employment rights, as well as the role of the union in terms of protecting them, right? And I think in us going down to the IHLs in the past year, that is really I think one of the key steps that we're taking to firstly understand their anxieties, but also in doing so, helping them understand that, look, there is also a union that you can turn to. And so in school, for example, when you do encounter any issues, perhaps with your internships and whatnot, you can go to your career guidance office, right? But in your first year, in your second year, when you're out of school, who can you turn to? It is actually the union, right? And apart from the unions, there's also Young NTUC, obviously. So Young NTUC is trying to play that role to help to breach some of this understanding. And besides that, I think Young NTUC can definitely do more in terms of exploring some partnerships with the different IHLs too. Helping the youths understand what role can NTUC play beyond protection as well, right? So for example, in terms of your work prospects, in terms of placements, there's actually a variety of things.
Right, okay. So when you say can play a larger role, does it just mean going down to the universities, polytechnics, and ITs to give talks, or what else can you do? Like, what is that, what more?
So, well, in IHLs, youths start taking on part-time jobs, for example, right? And sometimes when they receive that contract, they don't understand how to interpret, they do not know how to interpret the contract, right? So these are actually some areas where Young NTUC or our unions can actually come in to help them, right? It could even relate to things like your MC, leave entitlement and whatnot. Yeah, so I think it's beyond just giving talks, right? It's helping them to understand, or rather, if they do encounter any issues in their part-time work, etc., they can actually approach the union too.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you. We have a question from the floor over there.
Hi, my name is Yu Hong, and I'm a final year student at Temasek Polytechnic pursuing a diploma in psychology studies. So my question is more directed at Dr. Sam. So I understand from your research study that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the usage of generative AI is associated with a reduction of valuation of hard work as mediated by reduced uniqueness among youth. So how can this finding be applied such that it is beneficial to help youth to navigate a world where education and workplace are looking to augment generative AI?
Okay.
Great question. So as a researcher, as opposed to a policymaker, I'm less interested in the intervention and policy that we can use. That's not to say those are not important, but those would be one of my colleagues' expertise. In my research, you're absolutely correct that we find this effect among undergraduates, and then we have kind of seen this effect among secondary students in two high schools in Singapore as well. So this trend is quite worrying, and as of now, we have no solutions. But in my view, research has to be done to look at the causes first before we look at solution intervention. So it's a process, so to speak. Thank you for the question.
Another question from the floor?
Hi, I'm Yao Shen from Dunman High School. So I was reading this CNBC article which says that work-life balance matters less to those who earn more. And I was just wondering if there's higher living costs, would there be a conflict between wanting to hustle and earn more and achieving work-life balance? Thank you.
Okay, I think this can be open to all the panelists. You want to take that again?
I just want to give an example. So there's some research showing that if you feel passionate about your work, you typically value work-life balance a bit less. You typically work more and you find enjoyment. So as a personal example, when I was about age 24, about 10 years ago, there was a Christmas, December 25th. I was in Seattle, Washington. I was doing my PhD. I was very happy that morning because I could finally drive to campus and park in front of my office without paying for parking. Now that sounds really crazy, but I step in the office. We have a shared office with 20-some PhD students. I would say at least half showed up. And those half become, 5 years after they graduated the PhD, myself included, got really good jobs, worked really hard, attained status, and they never really once complained about work-life balance or imbalance. They have good families, they have good job, good career. So I got a sense that you're probably right that those individuals who are on the high-paying job probably value this less, but not because they are just workaholic, but simply because they enjoy their work intrinsically a bit more than those on the other end of the spectrum.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sam. Natasha, you had something to say.
I think it's also recognizing that there will be many seasons in life, right? And I think one of the things that is on the side of youth is actually time, right? And so what quite a number of even my peers, for example, we do discover that earlier on in our careers we have that much time, right? More time to pursue whatever is it that we want and whatnot. So I think when we think about your entire career trajectory from that sense, work-life balance doesn't have to take place in that specific role or that specific time. We should really look at it in terms of your broader career life, for example. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think there's also a danger of because for example, a lot of the hard jobs like in the heart, like nursing and all of those elderly care, social work. There's a lot of passion, but at the same time, it can run out. That you can get burnt out, you can do all those things, and you can feel not necessarily there's no work-life balance, but you just feel overworked and burnt out. So there is also a danger in that spectrum, and I do agree that in your career is so long, right? So at which point of time will you be willing to sacrifice work-life balance versus at which point in your life, are you not willing to do it? So it really depends on your own personal priorities at that moment of time, yeah.
So the answer is it depends.
Depends, yes.
Okay, yeah, one question over there on the floor, yeah.
Hello, my name is Barnabas. I'm a year 3 computer engineering student from Ngee Polytechnic. And I have a question on AI that's similar to the one earlier. On the topic of AI, earlier it was shown that AI-assisted work is deemed higher quality than work done without AI. However, there may be an issue where individuals would not be fully credited for their AI-assisted work as it was not strictly based on their ability alone, especially in academic settings. So my question is a two-parter. First, should there be a point where proficiency in using tools like ChatGPT be recognized as a proper skill, much like proficiency in tools like Excel? And how should AI assistants be integrated into academic and professional settings?
Yeah, so the first question, definitely answer is yes. We have prompt engineer these days. This is still very early on in terms of development of AI-related careers, so definitely that would be a yes in my opinion. The second question in terms of how AI should be integrated into higher education, I would say that at NUS, we have this faculty level policy the individual professors can decide how they want to use it. Do they allow it? Do they not allow it? It's really up to professors. So me personally, I cannot speak on behalf of NUS, but me personally, I really encourage my students to use AI to really better the understanding of the topic that I have been teaching. And so I really do hope that more educators, perhaps at the secondary level, at the JC level, can also embrace the use of AI in education, because you can reject it now, but in even 24 months, that's just simply not plausible. And American counterparts have been doing that sooner than the Asian counterparts, and I really encourage all of us educators here to really embrace this change.
Okay, thank you. One more question from the floor there? Yeah, okay.
Hi, I'm Aditya Das. I'm from United World College Dover campus. I want to ask specifically about professional portfolios. Considering that youths do have time, so to speak, can they fit in gig work or blue-collar jobs into their professional portfolio and therefore help build a base or propel them into the workforce to gain better job opportunities in the future post maybe 30 years old, let's say?
I think
Hey, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the short answer to that is yes, but perhaps what the youths need help with is how to design, that resume and whatnot, in order to ensure that it's relevant for the career aspiration that they have. And I think earlier on I spoke about mentorship, right, and the guidance from your career officers and whatnot. I would highly encourage youths. If you have not yet, embarked on a mentorship, try it. If you are worried in terms of, what do I ask the mentor, or how do we conduct that relationship, Young NTUC has the resources to help you. And I think that would really provide more clarity in terms of which path, what type of job you should really be looking at in order to build the resume that you want, so that, you can work towards your career goals.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Natasha. Anyone else has views on that? No?
I guess even if it doesn't help with your resume, but at least you have this experience that's so different, and it helps to make you grow as a person, and that might eventually help you in your professional life. Yeah.
And so it's not just how it looks like on your resume,
Yeah,
but
not just how you look
the
like.
actual qualities that
Yes.
you have gained from that. Okay. And we have two more people there? Yeah, okay.
Hello, my name is Meerav Berry and I'm a student at the United World College of Southeast Asia, East Campus, and my question is primarily targeted towards Professor Sam Yam. How much does a postgraduate degree such as an MBA help you in the current labor market, particularly in the finance or business consultancy industries, and is it worth doing it?
So one disclaimer, my son just applied to UWC. So I'm not sure if you get in or not. So just one disclaimer. So I'm very fond of UWC students, by the way. The Dover campus, specifically. And then now to your question about the value of an MBA. So I teach in the MBA program as well, so I'm obviously positively biased. We see very clearly the statistics pre and post MBA in terms of salary is certainly a significant jump. Most MBA students who enter our program typically don't want just that. In fact, they want to switch their career. They might be in a career of servicing, for example. They want to switch to technology, they want to switch to consulting. That's what an MBA really is for. So I would say that it's not just in Singapore, globally speaking, especially in the US. So MBA is a US-centric market with some top-tier institution in France, also in London. Same thing. However, I would say that acknowledging that the MBA market is shrinking a little bit, because young people typically value time these days a lot more than their parents. So there's a really strong proliferation of one-year master's program, very popular started in Europe, now more popular among Asians, and certainly in the US as well. So long story short, MBAs still carry values, but there are a lot of other options out there that are shorter that may be able to fulfill your goal as well.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm Belle Jo. I'm also from UWCSA Dover campus. And I would like to ask the panelists, how would the panelists suggest youth to find their true area of interest for future careers, and where they would truly love to commit time and energy into?
Okay, so how do you find your true area of interest? Advice to youth out there. Maybe you can draw from either personal or professional experiences?
So there's some research showing that most people believe that the interest would pop up and show up to them. Let's say one day you play the piano, you just enjoy doing it, and you play it forever. In reality, interests are not really, they don't just drop on their lap. Typically, interests are developed, passions are developed. So a lot of people also confuse the idea of talent versus passion. So they believe that if you're passionate about certain things, you must be very good at doing that thing. In reality, we ask most individuals, are they like people who are very good at domain X, Y, and Z's? They typically develop those interests into their passion, as opposed to just say, you know, I'm very good at this, and I should be doing this for the rest of my life. So that's according to research. My personal story has been pretty much similar. I would say that I was in a different industry before being a professor, and I certainly enjoy doing this a lot more than the other industry. And it wasn't really something that happened just in a second. It just happened because I explored this occupation, I explored this career with guidance, with mentors that helped me to guide my career trajectories.
Okay, thank you. Natasha?
I would say that, well, take your time to discover your passions. And what I mean by this is to also really get out of your comfort zone, try and experience new things. And it doesn't matter if you end up realizing that, oh, this is not something I like, right? Because then, you can cross that out and discover what else is there. Otherwise, right, your worldview would likely be similar, and you may not know, right, what kind of passions you could develop. So it's just getting out of your comfort zone and experience as many things as you can while we are young.
Yeah. So I completely agree that what you're talented at might not be what you're passionate at, because for me personally, so I have a degree in sociology. So when I first started studying sociology, my language skills weren't fantastic. I didn't understand half of what the readings were talking about. We have to read and write a lot. But then because I really enjoyed learning about ideas so much that I forced myself to sit down and really improve my language skills. And eventually, it became the driving force of what my career choices have been. So, and I really wanted to I want to create impact in the world. So that's how I chose my different career paths. From, I went to the UN, then I went to IPS, then and now I'm a journalist. So it's kind of like, what do you like? And are you willing to spend time and effort and invest in it, and then really make it your career pathways. Yeah.
So make what you like into what you're good at.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We have time, 2 minutes, so one last question. Yes.
My name is Karina Lim, and I'm from Aware. I work with a team of very talented young researchers and people who care about gender equality, social justice. They don't work for the top dollar, but they work for meaning. And increasingly, I find that youth really want meaning in their work. So, I've worked in the space for quite a few years. I do find this generation to want it even more. Why? Because I think on the internet, they can get meaning, whether it's social or that they have a voice. And secondly, they find it, they feel powerless as well. In the face of climate change, these big, huge things, what can they do? So they really want to find it at their work. So that I think the question for all bosses, for all companies, including myself, and we are experimenting with a few things, is how can we make every job meaningful for that person in that job? You can't control social status and how society looks for it, but certainly you can control how you as a boss, as the company, values a young person's voice and contribution. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Karina.
To hear
So what is it that we can do to make every job meaningful? Yeah.
I think first, you mentioned about inequality and climate change. I think first we have to think about the reality. There's a really interesting book by a guy named Rosling. It's a Swedish public health researcher called Factfulness. Right? The idea is that we're making a lot of progress in equality. We're making a lot of progress toward climate change. And yet, most people still don't believe it's happening. So I'll give you one example. Climate-related death has decreased by about 90% in the past 50 years. And yet, all the time you see only people who are suffering from tsunamis, from earthquakes, from natural human disaster, right? So I think first we have to agree on the reality, statistically speaking, we're making a lot of progress on a lot of difficult social issues. We have a long way to go, right? But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that humans as a race, we have done a lot in the past 50 years to address these issues. So I think first we have to be, just like I said, being realistic and be more hopeful that what we have done is very good already. We should still achieve more, as opposed to just learning to be helpless in how we think about these social issues.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe Natasha, you had some thoughts?
Yeah. I think definitely it would be to articulate the impact that the job helps to create, that the company is creating. I think very often when a youth, starts in his or her first role, it is maybe a little bit more challenging to see that, right? Because they are all they're in a junior position. So I think if seniors in the company, bosses could take a little more time to help explain that to them, I think it would help. Importantly, help to also draw relevance in terms of the strengths that they have to this impact, so that they really feel that they are creating a value in the company. I think that can help to add to the meaning of the job.
Thank you. And Wendy?
So it's about how do you think that you are contributing to the team and to society at large? So I feel like every job kind of has its own contributions, and at the same time, you can also be the type of person who don't find meaning in work. Maybe work is just money, right? And then you can find meaning in other areas of work, and it's just because life is very long, and then you have so many components, right? So maybe work is just one aspect, but you can also find meaning if you choose to. Yeah, so that's
right.
That
So one option is side hustles. You can find meaning in side hustles, and the other is basically look at like Natasha said, how do you articulate the meaning and the contribution? So sometimes when you're working in a role, you see what it is that's just right in front of you, but you don't see where you fit in the bigger picture. So actually, in the larger scheme of things, this is your contribution to overall, so that can help. Okay, with that, we end the panel. We are a little bit over time. Thank you so much to the panelists for their wonderful insights. I'm sure all of you have enjoyed the session today. And also thank you for the questions coming from the floor. Very exciting. We had a long list of questions that we weren't able to address today, but I hope some of the more pressing ones were discussed. Thank you so much.